pregnant with triplets, she collapsed at his wedding. And only her CEO ex-husband could save their lives. Triplets. Elara, were you ever going to tell me? I came to the wedding to find you. At my wedding? To another woman? I thought you deserved to know before you completely disappeared into your new life. Before what, Elara? Why didn't you tell me you were carrying my children? Because the last time I tried to tell you something that mattered, you had your assistant send me a check and your lawyer send me papers, without even hearing a word I said. These are my babies. My blood. And you would have stood at that altar, married someone else, never knowing they existed. Your family made it clear I was never worthy of the Ashford name. Why would they want my children to carry it? Have you ever stood across from the person who broke your heart in two? Have you ever carried a secret so heavy it felt like it would swallow you whole? Tonight, we're going deep into a story about the choices that haunt us and the moments that change everything. Happens when silence becomes a weapon we turn on ourselves? When the walls we build to protect our hearts nearly become our coffins? Elara thought staying quiet was the safe choice. She thought protecting herself meant keeping her secret. But her silence nearly cost her everything, including 3 lives that had barely begun. Can love survive that kind of betrayal? Can forgiveness reach wounds that run deeper than pride, deeper than blood? Stay with me because this story will shake you to your core. If stories about redemption and the stubborn power of love speak to your soul, hit that like button right now. And if you believe second chances are real, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for stories that will restore your faith in love. The Whitmore Grand Hotel had never looked more extraordinary. Ivory candles cast, warm amber light across polished marble floors while 300 of New York's most elite mingled in couture gowns and bespoke suits. Gardenias and white wisteria cascaded from iron archways above the outdoor terrace where Dominic Ashford would marry Isabel Fontaine in what every society magazine had already declared the union of the season. But standing near the back of the manicured courtyard, gripping an invitation she had never expected to receive, Elara Voss felt as though she was watching her own burial. 7 months pregnant with triplets, his triplets, she pressed a trembling hand to her swollen belly and watched the man she had once called her entire world adjust his platinum cufflinks with the same careful precision he had once used to trace the curve of her shoulder in the dark. "Don't come." Her best friend Nadia had begged her that very morning. What could you possibly gain from this? But Nadia didn't understand. For 6 months, Elara had carried this secret like a stone lodged behind her ribs. 3 babies, Milo, Ezra, and Clara. She had already named them. 3 lives growing inside her, conceived during their final desperate night together before the divorce was made official. A night that was meant to be the last goodbye. She had tried to tell him in those early weeks. But every time she reached for her phone and worked up the nerve to dial, she remembered his exact words the last time they had spoken about having children. "Maybe eventually, Elara, but not now. The company needs everything I have right now. A baby would derail everything." That conversation had been about a hypothetical future. This was about 3 very real lives. The ceremony music began. Pachelbel's Canon in D. The same piece they had chosen for their own wedding 3 years ago. Elara's throat tightened as she watched Dominic take his place at the altar, devastating in a midnight navy suit, dark hair flawless, those sharp gray eyes that had undone her more times than she could count now fixed on another woman walking toward him down a flower-lined aisle. Isabel Fontaine was everything Elara was not. Blonde where Elara was dark-haired. Tall and willowy where Elara was petite and now visibly, unmistakably round with pregnancy. Old money where Elara had grown up in a modest apartment in Pittsburgh. Most importantly, Isabel had his family's approval, something Elara had spent 2 years desperately trying to earn and never receiving. "She simply isn't our kind, darling," Dominic's mother had said during the separation. Perhaps this is how it was always meant to end. The irony hadn't faded with time. The Ashford family had gotten exactly what they wanted. Their son standing at an altar beside someone they had hand-selected for him. They simply didn't know that in that very crowd, beneath an emerald wrap dress, the next generation of Ashford blood was growing stronger by the hour. As the ceremony ended and guests flowed into the grand reception ballroom, Ilara made herself follow. She had come this far. She would see it through. The ballroom was breathtaking in the way only obscene wealth could achieve. Soaring frescoed ceilings, walls dressed in rare artwork, floor-to-ceiling French doors opening onto gardens where fountains caught the evening light like scattered diamonds. Ilara accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server, her hands unsteady as she scanned the crowd. She recognized many of these faces. She had once been welcomed among them as Dominic's wife. Now she was invisible, just one more guest in a sea of strangers. Ilara? Ilara Voss. She turned to find Thomas Harlan, Dominic's former college roommate and longtime friend, cutting through the crowd toward her with genuine warmth in his expression. Thomas. She managed a smile, her free hand moving instinctively to rest on her stomach. He stopped short when he saw her, eyes widening. You look incredible. Glowing, actually. His gaze dropped briefly to her belly. Congratulations, I didn't know you'd remarried. I haven't, she said quietly, watching his expression shift from confusion to slow understanding. Oh, Ilara. He glanced across the ballroom toward where Dominic was accepting embraces from well-wishers. Does he know? Before she could answer, applause swept the room as the newlyweds took the dance floor for their first song. She watched despite herself as Dominic pulled Isabel into his arms with practiced ease. He had held Ilara like that once. Had murmured things into her hair while they swayed together in their apartment kitchen at midnight, barefoot, laughing, her head tucked against his chest. I love you, Ilara, he had whispered one of those nights, his arms tightening around her. I want to give you a real life. A home. Children with your eyes. But that was before the company went public. Before success became something that consumed him rather than completed him. Before he started treating love like a line item that could be deferred to next quarter. The memory arrived like a wave she hadn't braced for. Suddenly the ballroom lights were too bright, the noise too loud, the air too thin. The babies, all three of them, seemed to sense her distress and shifted against her ribs with restless urgency. Ilara, are you all right? Thomas's voice reached her as though from the far end of a tunnel. She opened her mouth to reassure him, but pain, sudden and absolute, drove through her lower abdomen like a blade. Something was wrong. She knew it with a certainty that bypassed thought entirely and went straight to instinct. No, she whispered, her grip tightening on Thomas's arm while her other hand pressed hard against her belly. Something isn't. The glass slipped from her fingers. Crystal shattered across marble. And the world tipped sideways. Through the blur of the ballroom going white at the edges, she saw him, Dominic, still radiant in his navy suit, still spinning his new bride, completely unaware that his past and his future were collapsing in a cascade of broken glass and silent, desperate prayers. Help! Thomas's voice cut through the music and chatter. Someone call for help. The ballroom erupted in gasps and urgent whispers as guests turned toward the commotion. Ilara felt herself going down, the emerald dress pooling around her as the marble rushed up and darkness swallowed the edges of her vision. But through it all she heard his voice. That voice. The one she had spent months trying to unhear. Ilara. And the last image she held before everything went black was Dominic Ashford shoving through the crowd. His face stripped bare of every polished mask he wore, reaching for her with hands that had, just moments ago, been holding someone else. Time moved like thick water as Dominic watched the impossible happen. Ilara, His Ilara, folding to the ballroom floor in front of 300 people as though someone had simply turned her off. "Call an ambulance," he shouted, not caring what protocol he broke, not caring whose eyes were on him, not caring about anything at all except closing the distance between them. He dropped to his knees on the cold marble and gathered her against his chest, her face pale as winter light, her hair, longer now than when they were together, spilling over his arms in dark waves. That was when he saw it, the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath the flowing fabric of her dress. Pregnant. Heavily, obviously, undeniably pregnant. "Sir, we need you to step back." A paramedic's voice cut through the haze. Dominic couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't calculate anything beyond the woman in his arms and the mathematical impossibility of what he was looking at. "Sir, are you family?" "I'm her husband," he said. The words came out before thought, feeling both foreign and completely inevitable. "Ex-husband." Isabel's voice, cool and controlled, came from directly behind him. Turned. She stood in her wedding gown, expression composed with the particular discipline of someone raised never to show cracks in public. "We were just married. Remember?" The paramedic looked between them, visibly uncertain. "Sir, are you the father of her child?" Dominic looked down at Ilara. At the hands he remembered pressing against his face in the dark. At the lips that had once said his name like it meant something sacred. The math was not complicated. 7 months pregnant. 9 months since the night they said goodbye. "Yes," he said, his voice stripped to the bone. "I'm the father." The ambulance ride to St. Marcus Medical Center was a blur of sirens and controlled urgency. Dominic held Ilara's hand while paramedics worked around him. Blood pressure, oxygen levels, fetal monitors. Heartbeats. Plural. "Are those 3 distinct heartbeats?" the paramedic confirmed, eyes on the monitor. "She's carrying multiples. Triplets. 3 heartbeats. 3 babies." "His babies? How long has she been unconscious?" "Approximately 12 minutes. Her vitals are holding, but we need to identify the cause of the collapse. Multiples pregnancies carry elevated risk, especially in the 3rd trimester." Dominic closed his eyes. He thought about the last real fight they'd had, the night he'd accused her of pressuring him when she'd only been sharing what she wanted. The look on her face when he'd said, "This isn't the right time, Ilara. Maybe after the next funding round, but not now." He had used the word distraction. He remembered the exact shape of her face when he said it. She had left that same night. Filed for separation 2 weeks later. He had told himself it was the right outcome for both of them. Now, watching monitors chart the heartbeats of 3 children he hadn't known existed, he understood with cold, devastating clarity that he had talked himself into the worst decision of his life. The hospital room was white and still. Ilara came back to consciousness slowly, like surfacing through warm water. The first thing she registered was his scent, cedar and something darker, something she had spent months trying to forget. The second was the beeping of machines and the dull pull of an 4 in the back of her hand. "Don't try to move too quickly." Dominic's voice was low and precise, velvet with an edge of steel. "Doctor's orders. Complete rest." Her eyes opened. He was beside her bed, still in his wedding suit, tie hanging loose, jacket discarded, dark hair disheveled in a way that told her he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. The sight of him, so achingly familiar, so impossibly close, sent a wave of emotion through her that she didn't have the strength to hold back. "The babies," she whispered, her hands going immediately to her belly. "All 3 of them, fighting like they have something to prove," he said. And the ghost of a smile crossed his face before it faded. "Strong heartbeats. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. Triplets, Ilara." The smile was gone. The question beneath the words was not. Were you ever going to tell me? His voice was controlled, but she could hear what it was costing him. She shifted carefully against the pillows. I came tonight to tell you. His gray eyes searched her face with an intensity that felt like being held under light. At my wedding. I thought you deserved to know. She paused, steadying herself. Before you disappeared completely into your new life. Before what, Ilara? The old shortening of her name sent a shiver through her despite everything. Before you were unreachable, she finished. Before there was no version of this conversation that made any sense. Dominic stood abruptly, moving to the window. Below, the city glittered in indifferent brightness. His shoulders were rigid with tension she recognized. Tension he'd always held in his back when he was fighting something internal. What happened to us? He said, not turning. We used to say everything to each other. We used to be a team. Teams make decisions together, she replied, old hurt finding its way into her voice before she could stop it. Teams don't respond to a conversation about having children with, I'll consider it after the next quarter. You made the decision for both of us. Repeatedly. I was building something, he said, finally turning to face her. I know, she said. You were always building something. There was always another reason our actual life had to wait. So you decided to carry my children alone. I didn't decide anything. Her voice cracked at the edges. These babies weren't planned, Dominic. They were conceived the night before our divorce was finalized. The night you held me and told me that I loved you, he finished, his voice barely above a whisper. That I couldn't imagine a world where you weren't in it. The memory sat between them like something neither could touch. That night had been tender and ferocious and heartbreaking, a goodbye that felt like dying from the inside. And then you married someone else, she said quietly. Had, he corrected, stepping closer. I was married for less than 4 hours. She stared at him. Dominic, what did you do? What I should have done long before tonight. He sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel warmth radiating from him. I never stopped loving you, Ilara. Marrying Isabel was supposed to be the logical move. The strategic alliance. The thing that made sense on paper. Your family's approval, she murmured. She remembered the years of it, the careful politeness that masked quiet condescension, the way his mother's eyes would flick over her as if calculating exactly how much she fell short. My family's approval means nothing to me anymore. Not compared to this. He reached out, and his hand covered both of hers where they rested on her belly. And she felt the babies move, all 3 of them, shifting and turning as if they knew. They felt that, she breathed. They know you somehow. His expression broke open into something raw and unguarded that she hadn't seen in years. Just like their mother knows me, he said quietly. Just like I know you. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid and everything that had been said too late. Despite the divorce, the silence, the months of distance, the undeniable pull between them remained, electric and insistent and terrifying. We can't just, she started. Can't what? His thumb traced slow circles on her hand. Because sitting here with you, feeling them move, watching you hold yourself together when I know how much you've been carrying alone, this is the only place I want to be. Before she could answer, the door opened. Dr. Okafor entered, calm and authoritative, immediately reading the room and choosing to ignore everything except what mattered medically. Ms. Voss, we need to discuss what's happening with your body. It's Voss, Ilara confirmed quietly, though the doctor's use of the Ashford name had sent unexpected warmth through her in spite of everything. My apologies. Ms. Voss, your collapse tonight was the result of severe preeclampsia. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, And your labs are showing significant protein levels that indicate your organs are under stress. Dominic's hand tightened on hers. What does this mean for the babies? In standard circumstances, we would deliver immediately to protect both mother and children. But at 28 weeks, the risks of premature delivery are significant. Triplets born at this stage face underdeveloped lungs, potential neurological complications, and digestive system fragility. What are the options? Ilara asked, her voice steady in a way that impressed him. Aggressive medication to manage your blood pressure. Steroid injections to accelerate lung development in the babies. And absolute bed rest. But I want to be honest with you, we are buying time. Days, possibly weeks if we're fortunate. If your condition worsens, we will have no choice but to deliver regardless of gestational age. The silence after the doctor left was heavy enough to press against the chest. They are going to be okay, Dominic said, and his voice held a certainty that was almost fierce. Whatever they need, the best specialists, any treatment available, I will make it happen. This isn't something money fixes. Ilara's voice was soft, not harsh. No, he agreed. This is something love fixes. He cupped her face with both hands, his thumbs gentle against her cheeks. A father who has been given an impossible gift and is not going to waste a single moment of it. The tears she had been holding back for months finally came. I was so afraid, she whispered. Afraid to raise 3 babies by myself. Afraid you wouldn't want them. Afraid you'd think I'd engineered this somehow to pull you back. Ilara. He leaned close, his forehead nearly touching hers. You freed me. From the moment I saw you go down tonight, from the moment I understood what I was looking at, nothing else existed. Not the wedding, not the optics, not any of it. Only you. What happened with Isabel? His breath was warm against her face. She looked at me the moment I saw you fall, he said. And she said, you still love her. Not a question. A statement. What did you tell her? The truth. That I never stopped. That marrying her would have been the most unfair thing I ever did to another person. He held her gaze. She ended it herself. Said she deserved a man whose heart was fully present. She was right. Ilara felt a wave of empathy for the woman she'd never met. She sounds like someone with integrity. Far more than I gave her credit for, Dominic admitted. His thumb traced her jaw softly. But you, Ilara, why didn't you tell me sooner? Pause here and think about this moment. How many of us have swallowed the truth out of fear and watched the silence cost us everything? If this story is hitting somewhere deep, show some love with a like and tell me in the comments. Have you ever kept a secret to protect yourself that ended up hurting you more? Before she could answer his question about the secret she'd carried alone, his lips found hers, careful at first, asking. And then, as she stopped bracing against him and simply let herself feel, the kiss deepened into something that held 6 months of grief and longing and everything they had never properly said goodbye to. When they finally broke apart, both were unsteady. The doctors said rest, he murmured. What I need, she replied honestly, is you. I've needed you every single day since this started. Dominic closed his eyes, pain moving across his features like weather. I didn't walk away from you, he said. I walked away from the possibility of us. From everything we could have become. Because I was terrified I'd be the same kind of father my father was, and the same kind of husband I'd already been. You weren't a bad husband. I wasn't a present one. There's a difference, and it matters. His voice was raw with self-reckoning. My father used to say that love was a sentimentality that weak men indulged in. I spent years trying to prove I wasn't weak. And in doing that, I became exactly the kind of man who doesn't deserve love at all. Ilara thought about Richard Ashford, cold and meticulous, who had built an empire by treating every relationship including his marriage as a calculation. During their time together, she had watched Dominic battle against becoming that man. Had watched him win some of those battles and lose others. "Your father was wrong," she said softly. "Love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes any of the rest of it worth anything." "I know that now," he said, pressing his lips to her knuckles. "I learned it by losing you. And I almost made it permanent by standing at someone else's altar." "What stopped you?" "Truly." Dominic ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Honestly? You did. Even before I knew you were there tonight. Even before I saw you fall. Something in me has been fighting that wedding since the moment I agreed to it. Some part of me couldn't let go of us." He looked at her directly. "I never authorized the final filing of our divorce papers." Her heart stopped. "Dominic, the papers were drawn up. Negotiated. Signed by you. But I kept telling my lawyer I needed more time to review the terms. The truth is I couldn't make it real. I couldn't close the door." His voice dropped. "We are still legally married, Elara." The room felt very still. "You're telling me now because I want you to know that even when I was planning a future with someone else, even when I was telling myself I had moved on, I hadn't let you go. Not entirely. Not ever." Before she could fully absorb this, a wave of pain hit her, sharper and longer than anything before. Her hands flew to her belly and the monitors surrounding the bed began alarming all at once. "Dominic," she gasped, gripping his hand with everything she had. "Something's wrong." He was on his feet and at the call button before she could finish the sentence. Her water broke in a warm rush, and suddenly the room was full of running feet and urgent voices. "Blood pressure critical," a nurse announced. 190/115 and climbing fast. "All 3 fetal heart rates dropping," said another. Dr. Okafor moved with quiet, controlled speed. "Severe preeclampsia, acute onset. We're going to surgery immediately. The babies have to come out now." "But they're only 28 weeks, Dominic's voice cracked. "Mr. Ashford, if we wait, we risk losing all 4 of them." Terror flooded Elara's system as the bed was unlocked and set in motion. Through the blur of the corridor and the overhead lights and the controlled chaos of 6 people moving in coordinated urgency, Dominic's hand stayed in hers. "I'm scared," she said as they reached the surgical doors. "I know, sweetheart. I know." His voice was steady in a way she suspected was entirely for her benefit. "But you are the strongest person I have ever known. You've been strong enough for 3. Now let us hold you for once." They reached the doors where they would be separated. He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead, warm against her cold, damp skin. "I love you," she called as the surgical team pulled the bed through. "All of you." "I love you too," he called back, his voice breaking on the last word. "Fight for us, Elara. Please. Fight for our family." The doors closed. And Dominic Ashford, who had spent a decade believing he could control every outcome of every situation if he simply worked hard enough and thought clearly enough, stood alone in a hospital corridor with nothing to do but wait. For the first time in years, he understood what powerlessness truly felt like. And he made promises, quietly and completely, to whatever forces might be listening, that if his family survived this night, he would spend the rest of his life being worthy of them. The waiting room was his purgatory. He paced it in the rumpled remains of a wedding suit that now felt like a costume from someone else's life. Bow tie hanging loose. Shirt creased with hours of fear and grief and hope. Every sound from the hallway made his pulse spike. He had built a company from nothing by controlling variables and anticipating outcomes. But here, in this room that smelled of recycled air and quiet suffering, he had nothing. No leverage. No strategy. No next move. A young hospital chaplain appeared in the doorway. Her expression was practiced in kindness without being false about it. "I heard about your situation," she said. "Would you like some company while you wait?" "I'm not sure I believe in much right now," he said honestly. "That's all right," she replied, sitting down in one of the chairs. "You don't have to believe in anything to need someone beside you." He sat. The silence was oddly bearable with another person in it. "Tell me about her," the chaplain said gently. "Your wife." "Technically my ex-wife. Technically still my wife. It's complicated." He pressed both hands against his face for a moment. "Her name is Alara. She sees things I walk past. Beauty in things that I wouldn't notice in 10 years of looking. She's warm in a way I forgot was real. She carried 3 babies alone for 6 months rather than risk hearing that I didn't want them." "But you do want them." "More than I've ever wanted anything. And I was too blind to know that until tonight." His voice broke quietly. "She was alone because I made her feel like she had to be." The chaplain was about to respond when Dr. Okafor appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs. "Mr. Ashford." He was on his feet immediately. "Ms. Voss is stable. The surgery went well, and her blood pressure is already responding to treatment." He exhaled, slow, complete, the kind of breath that comes after holding one for too long. "And the babies?" 3 children. 2 boys and a girl. Dr. Okafor's professional composure softened slightly at the edges. "Baby A, your daughter, is 2 pounds, 14 ounces. Baby B, your first son, is 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Baby C, your second son, is 2 pounds, 11 ounces. They are small. But Mr. Ashford, they are breathing independently. At 28 weeks, that is remarkable." He felt tears slide down his face without any decision to cry. "Can I see them?" "The NICU team is with them now. I can take you." Nothing had prepared him for what he found. The unit was a symphony of soft machinery, monitors tracking heartbeats no larger than a hummingbird's, ventilators standing by but not yet needed. 3 isolates in a row, each containing a person who had not yet been a person the last time he checked. "This is Clara," the NICU nurse said, indicating the first isolate. "She came out protesting and hasn't changed her position on that." She smiled. "This is Ezra, biggest of the 3, and already trying to investigate his own fingers. And this is Milo. He's the quiet one. But his grip strength will surprise you." Dominic approached Clara first. She was impossibly, heartbreakingly small, translucent skin, dark hair like Alara's, a stubborn set to her tiny jaw that he recognized immediately. "You can reach in," the nurse encouraged. "Touch is critical for preemies. It regulates their temperature and heart rate." The moment his finger touched Clara's palm, she closed her fist around it. That was all. That small grip, that instinctive trust of a creature who had never met him and already held him completely, undid everything he had left. "Hello, little one," he whispered, throat tight. "I'm your father. I know I'm late, but I am here now. And I am not going anywhere." He visited each of them in turn. Ezra, who opened his eyes when Dominic spoke and regarded him with solemn gray eyes that were unmistakably his own. Milo, who turned toward the warmth of his touch with quiet certainty, as though he'd been waiting. "They know your voice," the nurse said softly. "Even at this age. They've been hearing their parents for months." The thought of Alara talking to them alone in her apartment, telling them about a father who didn't know they existed, was something he would carry for the rest of his life. He stood between the 3 isolates and made a promise to all of them, quietly, completely, without the performance of it. He would be present. He would show up. He would not make them fight for his attention when his attention was already, entirely, finally theirs. 2 hours later he was allowed to see Alara. She was pale and groggy from anesthesia, but her eyes were open, and when she saw him in the doorway she let out a small, exhausted breath as if she'd been waiting. "Hey," she said. "Hey yourself." He pulled a chair close and took her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I went 12 rounds with something much larger than me." She searched his face. "Have you seen them?" "I have." His throat tightened. "Clara has your jaw, the determined set of it." Ezra looked at me like he was deciding whether I passed inspection. "And Milo," he paused. "Milo has your stillness. Your peace." "You named them." Surprise and something softer moved across her face. "You used my names. I found the list in your bag when I was looking for your insurance card. Milo, Ezra, and Clara." He brought her hand to his lips. "They are perfect names for perfect people." Tears slipped down the sides of her face toward the pillow. I had this whole imagined conversation where we'd discuss names together, where I'd ask what you thought. "I love them," he said simply. "I love that you chose them. I love that you have been holding all of this together when it should have been both of us." He leaned forward, his eyes direct and unguarded. "I was wrong about everything that mattered. I thought building something impressive would make me worthy of love. It only made me too important to myself to accept the love that was already mine." "We were both afraid," she said. "I was afraid I'd never be enough for your world, that I'd spend my whole life being measured against a standard I couldn't reach. My family's standard almost cost me the only things that actually matter." His thumb moved slowly across her palm. "I want to build something new with you, Elara. Not return to what we were. Something better. Something honest." "What does that look like?" "It looks like me showing up. Every appointment. Every sleepless night. Every moment they need someone and every moment you do." He met her eyes without flinching. "It looks like a family built on presence instead of promise." Dr. Okafor returned with an update. All 3 babies were stable, respiratory function improving ahead of expectations, full holding and skin contact possible within 48 hours if progress continued. After she left, they sat together in quiet that felt, for the first time, like something other than absence. "I have a confession," Elara said eventually. "What is it?" "I kept your sweater. The gray one you left behind. I told myself I was going to donate it." She didn't finish the sentence, but the truth of it hung in the air. "I kept your sketchbook," he replied. "The one with the watercolor studies you left in the studio. I kept it on my bedside table. I don't know what that says about me." "It says we're both a little foolish," she said, a watery sound in her laugh. "Foolish people who love each other," he agreed. "Foolish people who just became parents to 3 extraordinary children. Foolish people who have a great deal of work ahead of them. The best kind of work there is." 6 weeks later, Milo, Ezra, and Clara were cleared to go home. The house Dominic had purchased in Westchester, a wide colonial with a wraparound porch and a yard full of old maples, was ready. The nursery caught the morning light across 3 cribs arranged in a semicircle with a rocking chair positioned to watch over all of them at once. "It's exactly right," Elara said, standing in the doorway with Clara in her arms while Dominic carried the boys. "We're home," he said quietly. And for the first time in over a year, the word held its full meaning. That first night was chaos in the most human and beautiful sense. 3 different sleep schedules, feedings that overlapped by design, the overwhelming and humbling responsibility of keeping 3 new people alive and warm and known. "We are never going to sleep again," Elara said at 3 in the morning, half laughing, half collapsing, as Clara demanded more while Ezra cried and Milo observed everything with those serious gray eyes. "Probably not," Dominic agreed, managing a diaper change one-handed while bouncing the baby with the other. "But look at them, Elara." She looked, really looked, at their 3 children, and felt something in her chest expand beyond what she'd thought the human heart could hold. "Worth every minute of it," she said. "Worth everything," he agreed, leaning over to press his lips to her temple as they worked together in the blue light before dawn. Months passed. First smiles, first rolling over, the soft chaos of 3 infants becoming 3 distinct, opinionated, extraordinary little people. Dominic restructured his schedule without being asked, cut board meetings, delegated to people he'd always been too controlling to fully trust, and made it home for dinner every night. "The company will survive without you micromanaging it," his COO told him, visibly relieved. "That's what I'm counting on," Dominic replied. One evening, watching Ezra attempt to crawl toward a toy while Clara supervised and Milo considered the philosophical implications of the whole endeavor from his spot on the blanket, Ilara said quietly, "We should make it official." "Make what official?" "Us." She kept her eyes on the children. "We never technically divorced. We never technically reconciled. We are somewhere in the middle, which is fine, except I would like to not be in the middle anymore." Dominic was still for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want to marry you again," she said, and the certainty in her voice surprised her with its completeness. "Not because of the babies. Not because of the house. Because after everything, the grief of it, the silence of it, the year of carrying all of it alone, I still choose you. I choose you on purpose this time. Even knowing I'll make mistakes. We'll make them together," she said. "That's the entire point." He was quiet for only a second. "Then marry me, Ilara Voss," he said, turning to face her fully. "Marry me again, for all the real reasons this time." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time while Clara looked up at the sound and Milo blinked his serious eyes. "Yes. Completely and absolutely yes." 6 months later, they were married in their own backyard. Surrounded by people who had seen the worst of them and shown up anyway. 3 children who slept through their parents' vows in a row of portable cribs beneath the maple trees. This time when Dominic made his promises, he knew what they cost and chose them anyway. This time when Ilara said yes, she meant the whole of it, not just the easy parts but the hard ones, the unglamorous ones, the 4 in the morning ones. This time when they kissed, 3 small people, living evidence that love can survive its own worst impulses, were there to witness the beginning of their actual life together. Sometimes the greatest mistakes we make become the greatest gifts we receive. Dominic learned that an empire built on absence is just architecture, cold and impressive and empty at its center. Ilara discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness. It is the only door that leads to anything real. Their story asks us something we'd rather not be asked. What are we protecting ourselves from that we actually can't afford to lose? What truth are we swallowing that is slowly taking up all the room inside us? If this story moved you, if it found something in you that needed to be found, show it with a like. Subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more stories that go where the heart actually lives. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded. Love always finds its way back. If you let it.